I was cleaning up my room a bit after having done homework when my mom called us down to dinner. I calmly walked down the stairs, but my older sister Claire bolted past me, which earned her a reprimanding look from my mom as she was setting the table. While my mom and I ate peacefully, my dad began to lecture her about not behaving properly. He started comparing her to me, saying I was the perfect child because I was calm and quiet, while she was loud and rebellious. I could tell every comparison was like an arrow to her heart, but she'd never let it show. But before I go on, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. Also be sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any more awesome videos. That night, I was awake later than usual because I stayed up reading too long, and I heard my sister's window slide open. I tiptoed over to her room, peeked in, and saw her covered head to toe in a blanket. I figured she just got hot under the blanket, so she opened the window to let some cool air in. We had school the next day. That was Monday, so the schoolyard was full of gossiping girls. Oh, we went to an all-girls school. Mom and Dad always said, young men are too rowdy. From that, you can probably guess what their stance on dating was. Class was uneventful that day. We pretty much just settled back into work mode after the weekend. But when I went out to the yard for lunch, I saw a group of girls at a sitting area by a tree. I approached them to see what was going on, and that's when I saw that Claire and a classmate of hers were arguing. Claire was shouting, "Stay out of my business," to the girl, while the girl kept asking her why she had glitter in her hair. Why would my sister have glitter in her hair? Our parents hate glitter. They eventually began pushing each other around, but teachers separated them before things escalated further. They had to pull them apart like cats in an alley. When we got home, our parents were very angry at Claire. They sent me upstairs, but I could still hear their argument from my room. Claire's fight with that girl kept replaying in my head. Did she have glitter in her hair? That was weird. Why would she have glitter in her hair? I knew my parents would take a long time arguing with my sister, so I decided to take a risk for once and snoop around her room. If I found any glitter, I would immediately throw it out the window, so that wouldn't get Claire into even more trouble. I tiptoed into Claire's organized room. It looked almost exactly like mine, with light colors and a minimalistic style. I figured that if she was hiding anything, it would be in her closet. So I swung the doors open, as quietly as possible, of course. I dug around for a while, but couldn't really find anything. Then I noticed that there was a tiny shimmer coming from the very back of her closet. There was a box there. I grabbed the box, and when I opened it, it felt like I was seeing color for the first time. It was an explosion of color. I stepped back for a second, because seeing all that color in contrast with the sleek room and simple clothes was magical. I started digging into the box. It was all leotards and accessories. The leotards were bright and soft, full of sequins and beads. There were feather boas of every color in the rainbow. After admiring all those things, I went to Claire's bathroom. I knew she had to be hiding something there too. I looked in the cabinet under the sink, and at the very back, I found a similar box. Just much smaller. It was full of makeup, hair gel, and body glitter. She had loads of eyeshadow and lip gloss. Our parents hated makeup. They basically banned it in our house. And the contents of that little box would be enough to give them both a heart attack. I heard my parents quiet down downstairs, so I quickly shut the boxes and put them exactly where I found them. Then I snuck out of the room as quickly as I could. I waited forever to have an opportunity to get my sister's phone, but she took it everywhere with her. I planted the idea in my mom's head that she should take Claire on a walk with no distractions, just to bond. And so I finally had my chance. Her phone wasn't password protected because our parents said we had nothing to hide and therefore didn't need passwords. I opened her messages, and the only thing that stood out to me were 2 messages of directions with no context before or after, except for the days of the week, if that counts as context. The number wasn't even added to her contacts. For some reason, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I felt like a spy or a detective investigating, and I wanted to get to the bottom of this case. The next day, I was planning to go to one of the locations because it was the day the message said. I told my mom I was going to the mall to get school supplies, but instead, I hopped on a different bus and went to the address. I was nervous and fidgety, but excited. I arrived at this huge rectangle-shaped building, not surrounded by much. As soon as I opened the door, I saw a lot of colors, which reminded me of my sister's boxes of color. It was a gymnastics gym. There were hoops, mats, trampolines, balance beams, and so much more. There were loads of kids running around, doing flips and jumping. And then I saw Claire. She was hanging from these silks very high up in the air and doing all sorts of contortions. She was wearing a leotard more simple than the ones I saw in her closet. There was a woman on the ground below her, telling her what to do. She was smiling and she looked proud of my sister. It warmed my heart, because I had never seen that look on my parents' faces when they looked at her. Claire then saw me. Her face fell, and she swiftly slid down to the mat below her. She muttered something to the woman, and then speed-walked towards me, with panic in her eyes. "What are you doing here?" she asked me, to which I responded with the very same question. She said, "You shouldn't be here," when she shouldn't either. I started questioning her about how she could do this, when it was so dangerous and our parents would hate it so much. But she simply told me, "Because I love it." She proceeded to climb those things again and twist and spin. It was beautiful. She looked like a bird flying around free. But I still didn't think it was a good idea. That night, Claire woke me up very late and pulled me out of bed. She told me to come with her. I was so excited, so I just followed her. In my drowsy state, I quickly slipped some pants and a sweater over my pajamas. And then we climbed out the window. It was exhilarating. I had never been out so late at night before. I couldn't help but gaze up at the stars in wonder. We ran to a bus stop and got on the first bus that came. After a few stops, I couldn't believe my eyes. The music, the smell of food, the lights. It was beautiful. We were standing in front of a circus. Claire sat me down at the very back of the seats. People were settling in, so I guess the show was about to start. I waited for Claire, but she never came. I was entranced by the lights and music of the show when I nearly choked on my popcorn. My sister was hanging from a trapeze in one of those beautiful leotards. She had beautiful, colorful makeup on, and she was swinging around from side to side, doing all these intricate moves. I was at the edge of my seat, but not just because of how amazing it all looked. I was worried. Every time I saw her leap from one place to another, I thought I would faint. After the show, she was still cleaning up her makeup with some wet wipes when she went to see me. I jumped to her neck, hugging her immediately. "I take it you like the show then," she laughed. But I asked her to please never do it again. We argued all the way home. I wanted to tell Mom and Dad, but she begged me not to. She told me performing and gymnastics were the only things keeping her sane. She opened up to me about all the pressure she felt to be perfect and neat at home. When we arrived home, I saw in her face how much it hurt her to be in this quiet and minimalistic environment when she was naturally loud and flamboyant. "Let me show you how it feels," she said, turning on the light and grabbing her little box of makeup. She sat me down in front of her full-body mirror and started putting her makeup on me. When she was done, I was shocked. I had never seen so much life on my face. My eyes stood out the most. They looked bright and beautiful, when I always found my eyes dull. I started to tear up and hugged my sister. She was telling me how bright and beautiful I looked when the door opened. Our mom was standing there, groggy from having just woken up. But when she saw what we were doing, she woke right up. She grabbed me by the hand and started rubbing all the makeup off me with wet wipes. My sister told her to stop, but she didn't. She only stopped when I said she was hurting me, and then she told me to clean it up myself. I did so, and while I was washing my face, I could hear how they were arguing. My mom saw the colorful leotard peeking out of Claire's bag. She snatched it up and demanded to know what it was and where it came from, but then threw it out the window. She grabbed the box of makeup and struggled with Claire as she tried to snatch it back from her. Mom finally let it go and Claire fell backwards, but Mom started digging through her closet and found the box of clothes and accessories. She yelled at Claire for having those things, and I felt powerless watching them argue. She finally snatched both boxes from Claire and slammed the door closed. Claire looked as if she had just lost the source of her happiness, which she did. I tried to comfort her, but she seemed broken. It was as if she had been hanging from a thin piece of thread, and Mom had just cut it. A few weeks passed. The bags under my sister's eyes grew larger every night, and her eyes grew more and more dull. It felt like a stab in the gut seeing my sister so depressed and empty after having seen her soaring through the air looking bright and glowing. She woke me up in the middle of the night. She handed me a glass of water to wake me and then said, "I need your help." She showed me messages on her phone. The woman who was coaching her in the gymnastics gym was a co-owner of the circus, and she had texted Claire to tell her that the circus was moving across the country, and Claire wanted to go with. Please help me get my stuff back," she pleaded, and I didn't hesitate for a second. I tiptoed into my parents' room. I thought they'd wake up and froze like a deer in headlights. I climbed into the attic and held back a sneeze. It was all dust up there. I quietly climbed back down, carrying all the stuff. Claire packed her bag in a hurry. I could see the color returning to her face already. She was smiling. I hadn't seen her smile in weeks. We rushed downstairs and she grabbed some food for the journey ahead of her. We stood at the door. I was holding back tears. She hugged me tight and told me she'd call me as soon as she could. And then we heard a groggy voice behind us. Claire backed away, afraid. Our mom was standing there, shocked. "What the hell are you doing, girls?" she nearly shouted. She tried to get Claire's bags off her bike, but they were tied. She chased after Claire as she started biking away, but only managed to rip a single feather boa out of the bag. "Can't you see that she's miserable here?" I shouted at my mom for the first time ever. She shouted back at me, "I just wanted her to be safe." Any anger I had crumbled when I saw my mom cry. We hugged for a very long time, standing in the darkness. I could tell we were both changed by my sister. We looked on, and we hoped she would make it. I can now say she was very successful. She became one of the most famous trapeze artists in the country, and my parents and I visit her all the time. I'm glad I helped my sister, because now my parents realize that what they used to believe wasn't really the right thing.